Ladies and gentlemen, the call is now Places. Places, please, for Act One. The call is Places, please. Thank you.
In 1948, playwright Arthur Miller built himself a cabin, a writing cabin. From the inside of his shed came the inside of his head, the original title for the play we know today as Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman.
The man who creates personal interest is the man who gets ahead. Be liked, and you will never want.
The last hours in the life of a failing traveling salesman, riding on a smile and a shoe shine, was subtitled Certain Private Conversations in 2 Acts, plus a requiem. It exploded on Broadway in 1949, winning 33-year-old Miller the Pulitzer Prize. Showtime's cameras captured the final performance of the 50th anniversary production, directed for the stage by Robert Falls and starring Tony Award winners Brian Dennehy and Elizabeth Franz, and Ron Eldard and Ted Koch.
If there is one artist in the world that I trust with every fiber of my being, it's Arthur Miller. I don't need to know any more about Willie than Arthur tells us.
There's something that wells up into you that is so emotional and so deep. It's like the past wars of many, many, many centuries, of thousands of years. And this battle, of course, is the greatest because it's a family battle. It's a family tragedy. It's the demise of an American family.
It's a love story of the parents. It's a love story of the 2 brothers. It's a love story of the father and son.
Everyone can relate to somebody in this production. Whether you're the second son who didn't quite get the attention he may deserve, whether you're a Biff whose father had hopes and dreams for you that you let down somehow, or a Willie or a Linda, there's somebody that everyone can sort of throw themselves into.
Here's Lohmann. Was ist los?
The name Lohmann came from Fritz Lang's 1933 German classic, The Testament of Dr. Mabuse. Chief Detective Lohmann's assistant is afraid he's about to be killed.
And he's on the phone, and he's calling Lohmann, 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 and the light goes out on him.
Hands up! Lohmann! Verhelfen Sie mir doch um Gottes Willen! Lohmann!
And I realized, seeing it, that what it meant was a man all alone calling out for help. That's where the name came from.
The play had its pre-Broadway tryout in Philadelphia. Miller remembers opening night.
When the curtain came down, nothing happened. And they just sat there. And then after, it didn't show, it was a minute or 2, somebody got up to get his coat, and then another person got up, and then they began talking to one another, walking around, and then somebody remembered to applaud. The curtain was down. And then it went on for 20 minutes, and we brought the curtain up, and the cast was there. But they forgot that they'd seen the play. I think it was rather like some gigantic experience that they'd been through, which was not really a play. It was something else.
Death of a Salesman opened at the Morosco Theater on Broadway on February 10th, 1949. The next morning, Bernard Gimbel, the department store magnate, wrote a memo stating that no employee was ever to be fired for getting old.
People come to theater, my theory is to have their hearts broken, and they get their money's worth in this play.
Will you take that phony dream and burn it before something happens?
Well, I felt a little guilty to make them feel such raw emotion. I felt a little embarrassed by it all, but I got used to it.
You're a poet, you know that, Biff? You're an ideal. No, I'm mixed up very bad. Maybe I ought to get married.
Well, I thought this text needed a lot of work. I suggested quite a few rewrites to help Biff out, but Mr. Miller, kind of full of himself, wouldn't change a word. So, you know, Biff is a part that I think almost any young actor, when you first start in acting school, everyone's doing the bedroom scene, the two boys throwing a football. So it's just something that you always want to be part of.
Every one of us dropped the fear of the past ghosts of the play and just brought the play into ourselves and tried to throw it back out there fresh.
The thing that's true about Willie, like any great roles, like Hamlet, Lear, it can be done in many, many different ways. There are no rules about Willie, except that it is a tragedy, and it should have dimension. It should have pain and size.
The first Willie Loman, Lee J. Cobb, was only 37 when the play opened.
Well, of course, he discovered the role. He originated it, and it had a certain special tension in it because, for one thing, we weren't sure the audience was going to go with it, particularly in and out of his past and present and so on. And this was a real worry. So that creates a kind of high tension, which you can't reproduce because everybody knows it works. It's like discovering electricity twice.
In 1951, Laszlo Benedict directed the film version starring two-time Academy Award winner Frederick March, who received a third nomination for this performance.
I didn't care for that picture because they made him crazy. Willie's crazy. They were trying to pretend that there was nothing wrong with the system. It was just that he was nuts.
This is not what you do, Ben, but who you know. And the smile on your face. It's contacts, Ben. Contacts. The whole wealth of Alaska passes over the lunch table at the Commodore Hotel. And that's the wonder of this country, that a man can end with diamonds on the basis of being well-liked.
While Miller disliked the movie, he threatened to sue over the short subject that went with it. An amateurish sales training film, which used scenes from Death of a Salesman as examples of how not to sell.
A man can end with diamonds on the basis of being well-liked. No wonder poor Willie was such a failure. He just didn't have it. The background, the training, the preparation. He was a product of an era which happily is long since passed.
Why would a studio seemingly sabotage its own picture?
Because it was the 50s. It was the Cold War. They were very defensive about capitalism. They were scared to death of communism. And so they decided that this play should not be permitted to stand for the profession of salesmanship, which, of course, the whole economy is based on. And so they invented this stupid film. It's not even a film, it's simply a lecture, to dissociate salesmen from reality. And, of course, they try to make a film in which Willie's crazy. So it has no reflection on the economy or the country.
You're trying to put a knife in me. Don't think I don't know what you're doing.
All right, phony. Let's lay it on the line.
I just leave it there. Don't move it.
In 1966, Cobb and Dunnick reprised their Broadway roles for television, with Jimmy Farentino as Happy, and I was privileged to play Biff. Alex Segal directed.
Don't touch me, you liar! Apologize for you fake! You phony little fake! Come back here! Or I'll whip you, Biff! I gave you an order!
In 1975, George C. Scott directed and starred in the first Broadway revival.
He was a great Willie. It was a real pleasure to watch him. And he had a tremendous presence. He brought to it all the power of his imagination. It was quite wonderful.
The production also starred Teresa Wright, James Farentino, now as Biff, and a young Harvey Keitel as Happy.
You see, in those days, there was personality in it, Howard. There was respect.
In 1984 and 85, Dustin Hoffman won praise on stage and screen for his portrayal of Willie Loman.
Today, it's all cut and dried. And there's no
I do like the scene when he's trying to keep his job with the son of the guy that he worked for, and the son is now firing him.
If I had $40 a week, that's
kid,
all I need.
kid,
$40.
I
can't take blood from a
stone,
Willie.
Your Al Smith was nominated. Your father came to me.
I'm talking about your father. There were promises made across this desk. You mustn't tell me that you got people to see. I put 34 years into this firm, Howard, and now I can't pay my insurance. You can't eat the orange and throw the peel away. A man is not a piece of fruit.
A man is not a piece of fruit. That's an extraordinary aria for an actor.
Now, you pull yourself together. I'll be back in a little while.
Dustin is terrific. It's a wholly different Willie. He's the common man. And as such, he was very, very strong.
50 years to the day after opening on Broadway, Salesman got its newest patriarch, Brian Dennehy.
But I'm a dime a dozen, and so are you.
I am not a diamond dozen. I am Willie Loman. And you are Biff Loman.
Well, he's in the tradition of Lee Cobb, the big, tragic hero who is destroyed before your eyes. Of course, he's a powerhouse on stage.
Willie, you coming up?
It's a pleasure to watch him.
Until recently, the actress most associated with Linda Loman was Mildred Dunnock, who created the role on Broadway and repeated it on film and TV.
Have a good time with Dad tonight, dear. He may have good news, too. A New York job. Be sweet to him, dear. Be loving. Because he's only a little boat looking for a harbor.
Mildred was, remind me, incidentally, of Elizabeth Franz. They're both very, very similar, you know. It's a remarkable accident.
I don't say he's a great man. Willie Loman, he never made a lot of money. His name was never in the paper. He's not the finest character that ever lived, but he is a human being. And a terrible thing is happening to him, so attention must be paid. He's not to be allowed to fall into his grave like an old dog. Attention! Attention must finally be paid to such a person.
Well, Elizabeth made it far more angry, indignant, and protective of Willie. It's a new Linda.
I graduated from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and the president called me in the day before graduation and said, Elizabeth, you're a very good actress, but I don't think that you'll work until you're Millie Dunnock's age. And I didn't know who she was. And I said, can I try? And she said, oh, yes, dear, you can try, but don't get discouraged.
I always loved the very beginning, which was just Willie Loman coming in and sort of putting his bags down, and we never really know what he sells or anything. I just really love that. I found it so American.
Willie is selling himself. What's inside Willie's sample cases is himself. And it's essentially what we all do. That's why Willie resonates so strongly with the audience, because he's all of us. He's every person who's ever gone out of the house in the morning trying to make something happen for himself and for his family.
Some people say it's just a play, but there are elements that can't help but get inside of you.
Wow.
Now, between the time that we're filming this for Showtime, we had a week off. And, of course, Linda, there was no place for her to go except to sit. And it was very painful. And I found myself not having that release that I get. I felt like crying at a certain time every night. But there was nothing to cry about. And it's almost as if you don't have a life of your own. You want to live this life again tonight.
The reward is definitely at the end of the night when we go out at night and there's people waiting to see how much they're touched by it. And that suddenly you think, oh, that's what this is about. Sometimes Sometimes a play is hard, and it's just hard, and the joy is afterwards. And I really do feel that here, and you don't feel that all the time.
Death of a Salesman has had black Willy Lomans, an all-Yiddish production. There may even have been a Wilhelmina Loman.
Somewhere, I can't remember now, there was a woman played Willie. I don't know how they managed that.
The only thing there hasn't been is a musical.
No. Thank God, no.
Salesman has been translated into 29 languages. Miller has said that every day of the year there's a performance somewhere around the world. In Australia, where a 26-year-old rising star named Mel Gibson played Biff in 1982. Or in Rome, where a 28-year-old Marcello Mastroianni starred as Happy 31 years earlier. In France, in Germany, in Spain.
It's been playing in Japan for, I don't know, 30 years. And I just met the new Willie, whose father played it and is now 90. He played it till he was 90.
Miller himself has directed overseas productions in Stockholm and Beijing. The playwright says he went to China to prove that there is only one humanity.
Oh, yes, there are Willy Lomans around, in China, too. And these are lovely people. Attention must be paid to them.
If there's anyone left on Earth who doesn't know Death of a Salesman, what would the playwright like first-timers to feel after experiencing it?
It's hard for me to say. They ought to feel closer to life. They ought to feel they're more alive because they've been in the presence of life.
What's fascinating about this play is that people keep coming up to us after the show, sobbing, crying. And you realize that at some point in the play, they're not watching the Lomans. They're watching themselves. They're watching their parents, their brothers, their mother. And that's what art is. It's seeing a painting, it's listening to a piece of music, or reading a book, or seeing a play, which helps us to understand our lives better.
And that is why, in the words of its producer, Salesman will be loved, not just liked, or even well-liked, so long as there are hearts to break and spirits to lift.
Can you feel it?